Hello champions, it's season prime time and these are my impressions after roughly 2 hours of The Last Faith. Playing through this game for the first time only reinforced what I was already expecting to happen. It was basically love at first sight. The Last Faith is a combination of some of my favorite game types, so the battle was halfway won already. Now the combat, the overall art direction, the level of horror and the gloominess that are going on in The Last Faith only complement all the previously mentioned points and make it that much better. Now, a little disclaimer, there will be some minor spoilers in terms of names and environments for the first few sections of the game, but only for the first 10 to 15-ish minutes, so it's nothing too major. But you have been warned, and with that out of the way, let's continue. So it is finally time for The Last Faith, the beautifully sinister gothic horror Metroidvania love child of Blasphemous and Bloodborne, and it's amazing so far. In fact, it's so amazing I might actually buy this game on PlayStation or Switch as well, just because that's how much I actually like this game. If anyone else is just as crazy about it as I am, please let me know in the comments so I know I'm not the only one out there being this weird. Anyway, I've been waiting for this game for a long time and I'm super happy it's finally out and I've had a blast playing it for the first time on day one. I'm excited to share my experience so far and to explore this beautifully dark piece of pixel art more in the future. A bit of background information. The game has been developed by Kumi Souls Games and it was announced in May 2020 for the first time. And shortly after I saw a trailer of this game and I was hooked immediately. I've been following and anticipating the game with a lot of hype anyway though, enough fanboying from me for now. When you start up the game, you are presented a choice between 4 starting classes. Well, I'm saying starting classes, but what I actually mean are like combat styles, although the line is somewhat blurry here, you get the idea. Let's have a look. So the first choice is the Brawler, which is a strength-based warrior type relying on larger, heavy weapons that do a lot of damage and will feel super satisfying once you start turning your enemies' faces into mush. With 12 attribute points in Vitality, the Brawler is also the class that has the highest Vitality aka health among all the other classes. Which makes sense given he will usually fight quite close to any given enemy, so it's not a big surprise they made him somewhat more tanky than the other classes. Next up is the Rogue, who is the dexterity based fighter, who will prefer somewhat more different kind of weapons that I won't be going into detail right now for the sake of spoilers, but he will be doing swift strikes and have a generally somewhat lighter and quicker feel to their way of combat than the warrior. Next is the Stargazer, which is this game's equivalent to a magic-based character that uses focus as a resource in order to cast spells at long range for those who prefer the range combat over close quarter combat like Brawler and Rogues. Now, that being said, this doesn't mean you will stand with a catalyst or a staff and throw magic at the enemies. It's more like you will be using weapons that kind of do magic attacks and prefer doing so over doing melee combat, which is still a very viable and practical way of using these respected weapons, if you get my drift. So the Stargazer uses Mind as their main attribute. And I'm incredibly excited to play through the game as a Stargazer, to see what it's like to actually deep dive into this type of class. I feel like there will be a lot of surprises in store for us. I've only seen a few spells so far, which is a lightning type spell that reminded me of a certain someone, but I'm sure there will be many more awesome spells to discover. As you might or might not expect, the Stargazer starts off with the lowest vitality stat, which is your health in this game, so you could easily go for a glass cannon type build or something. But naturally, that comes with the problem of not to be able to take as much damage as the Brawler could, for example. But who knows, we might get more than enough points to level up our health decently enough, so that won't be a problem. Then we have the Marksman. Now the Marksman is quite interesting in my opinion. It may sound a little misleading in terms of what you would expect this combat style to be. However, I don't know the full extent of what they have in store for us yet, so we will have to see. In my opinion, it's very interesting to give us the choice of starting classes or, different combat styles in this type of game and offering us all of these different play styles. I couldn't decide which one to try first, but I will try them all out eventually. Now let's talk a little about the environment. The first area is basically a tutorial that teaches you how the basic controls of the game work. As in many other games, there will be prompts that tell you how to fight, jump, dodge and roll. The game throws a few basic mobs at you, so you can try out what fighting feels like, so you get a basic idea. You can get used to the enemies, movesets and how everything works, with a bit of platforming thrown into the mix, as well as a few closed doors, some little treasures and checkpoints, different ways to go, so you can figure out the overall pace and exploration part of the game in your own time, in order to get used to the flow of the game and dip your toes into this very well crafted world. Okay, let's talk about the first boss. He's relatively easy in terms of mechanics and looks super cool. You can clearly see the influence of From games here. The mechanics are very nicely telegraphed, and it shouldn't take too long to understand what is going on during the fight and what you need in order to progress through it. However, there may have been some people that died during this boss fight around 14 times or so during their stream, but you know, those are of course just rumors. Moving on. Now, after the first boss, you are given something that the game calls stigmas, which apparently are new skills that you obtain and can likely be switched around later when you game more. In this case, we just got an interrupt that stuns enemies as well, which is always handy to have and a very nifty addition to our skill set. In my opinion, however, it works just a little counterintuitive, as you have to press R1 and triangle, or RB and Y, depending on what controller you use, in order to activate the skill, which feels a little weird on my hand. Not sure how you feel about this, wouldn't mind some feedback on this. It's not a game-breaking thing though, just feels a little off, to be honest. And shortly after the boss, we meet Lady Helenia. No, I said Helenia, who is an NPC that serves as our level me up person. You collect a currency called Nycrux in this game, which is like souls or blood echoes, in order to spend them for attribute points. I tried to find out what Nycrux actually means, to no avail though. So if anyone knows, please let me know, okay? And as you can see, you can build your character as you like. Even if you choose like the Stargazer, you could easily build him to a strength character or build it whatever way you feel will be yours to go. I didn't find out whether this game is respeccing yet. I will stick to a rough idea of my character before I go too crazy experimenting with points, but that's just me of course, to each their own, and I'm sure we'll find out how many different options we have in terms of speccing and experimenting soon enough. What I really love about this game, for a pixel art game they did a fantastic job with the graphics. They look so absolutely great. There's a very high amount of detail and you can tell they were passionate about making the game as beautiful and as interesting in terms of combat, story, voice acting as they possibly could. There are so many layers in the fore and background that it adds a whole lot of depth to the game visually and also atmospherically. The soundtrack sounds about as gothic / horror / souls-like as you would expect. The dark choir / organ music helps setting the mood and kind of gets your blood pumping as you start descending into this brutal, blood-drenched, darkness-filled horror game. Some of the basic enemies have voice acting, as in they're spouting little lines at you if you didn't kill them first. Which is yet another detail that adds to the atmosphere. Somehow the game manages to make you feel like, even though we all have seen our share of gothic horror castles, villages and similar scenarios filled with cursed people and hell-spawned beasts, the characters and enemies we meet still feel fresh, new and therefore kind of eerie and sinister. In my opinion, the graphics, the voice acting, the soundtrack as well as the ambient sounds are absolutely top shelf quality, and the options in terms of combat add this extra bit of spice and flavor to make it even better. And I am very hyped to spend more time in this gloomy gothic horror Metroidvania blasphemous Bloodborne piece of art and uncover its mysteries, weapons, skills, bosses and stories. Before I finish the video, I would like to take a second just to say how much I appreciate the game's atmosphere, which is, if you couldn't tell, my personal primary focus on games. I love just getting lost in games and immerse myself in the world and the setting, as well as these little storylines of side characters, but also the overarching main plot and the voice acting, which adds enormously to the atmosphere.
My lady.
You speak with respect. Only now as I reveal myself to you.
And there we go. If you made it this far into the video, you are an absolute champion and I'm grateful you spent some of your precious time with me. I would like to thank you very much for being here. It does mean a lot to me, and of course I would appreciate a like and a sub if you would like to see some more gaming videos in the future, or say hi on Twitch when I'm live and we can nerd out about our favorite games and other stuff. You can also find my social media down in the description if that's more your thing. I love gaming and this is what my channel is about, and now you have a wonderful day, night or morning, whatever it may be, and I see you soon.